They gathered to celebrate family. Laughter filled the air. Old stories were retold, and wine flowed freely. But by the next morning, one member was dead, another was missing, and a dusty, forgotten would tear everything apart. This is a story of how greed poisoned a legacy, and how one family reunion turned into a crime scene. It was a warm June weekend when the Whitaker family descended on a sprawling countryside estate of 83-year-old matriarch Margaret Whitaker. She was the widow of Harold Whitaker, a steel magnate who had built the family's fortune from nothing. Every year, Margaret hosted a reunion at her late husband's estate. It was tradition: big meals, group photos, awkward small talk between cousins, and toasts of family legacy. Among the guests this year were Margaret's 3 children. Eleanor, the oldest, polished and controlling. Daniel, the middle child, a recovering alcoholic trying to make amends. Rachel, the youngest and most distant, an artist from Oregon rarely seen at family events. Also attending were various grandchildren, in-laws, and close family friends. But the atmosphere was tense this year. Margaret had recently hinted that she was planning to change her will again. Margaret's fortune was considerable, estimated at $15 million, not including the estate itself. For years, her children assumed they'd split everything evenly. But a few weeks before the reunion, she told her longtime housekeeper, Louisa, that she planned to leave everything to charity, except for a small portion to her youngest, Rachel. Why Rachel? According to Margaret, she was the only one who hadn't asked for money, who didn't feel entitled to it. What no one else knew was that Margaret had rewritten her will 3 days before the reunion. The new will was signed, notarized, and placed in her study safe behind a family portrait. But when detectives opened that safe just days later, it was gone. On the morning of the 3rd day of the reunion, Margaret's body was found at the base of the marble fountain in the rose garden. Her cane lay beside her, her reading glasses broken near the edge. Initially, the scene looked like a tragic fall. But then the autopsy came back. Blunt force trauma. Defensive wounds on her arms. A struggle. This wasn't an accident. It was murder. Family members were immediately questioned. Emotions ran high. Some were crying, others were quiet. And one person, Daniel, had packed a bag and left in the middle of the night. Detectives soon discovered that Daniel had recently lost a large sum of money in a failed business venture. He was also 2 months behind on alimony payments to his ex-wife and had recently tried to borrow money from his mother, who refused. His sudden disappearance painted him in a damning light, but he wasn't the only one with motive. Eleanor had a controlling grip over the family's trust and stood to lose that power under the new will. And Rachel, although quiet and seemingly innocent, had just re-entered Margaret's life after years of distance. Why now? Then came the twist. Louisa, the housekeeper, came forward and said she saw someone enter the study the night before Margaret's death. Someone wearing a hooded sweatshirt. She thought it was Rachel. For days after Margaret's death, Daniel turned himself in. He claimed he panicked, not because he was guilty, but because he knew how it looked. He admitted to arguing with his mother the night before she died, but insisted he went to bed alone, angry but not violent. Police were skeptical until they searched Eleanor's will. Inside a locked drawer, they found the will, the real, rewritten will, naming Rachel as the main beneficiary and donating the rest to a scholarship foundation Margaret founded in her husband's name. Eleanor insisted she found the will on the floor and planned to return it to the safe. But by then, no one believed her. The Whitaker estate had security cameras, but most of them were decoys or broken, except one, an old camera in the garden shed, and it had recorded everything. At 1:14 a.m., the footage showed Margaret leaving the house, followed shortly by Eleanor. 20 minutes later, Eleanor returned, alone, confronted with the footage and the hidden will. Eleanor confessed. She admitted to confronting her mother, trying to change her mind one last time. When Margaret stood firm, Eleanor snapped, striking her in the heat of the moment. She claimed she didn't mean to kill her, but instead of calling for help, she staged the scene to look like an accident. Then she took the new will and hid it, hoping the old one, which split everything evenly, would be honored instead. Eleanor was arrested and charged with second-degree pled guilty as part of a deal to avoid a life sentence. She's currently serving 25 years without parole. Daniel was cleared of charges, though the damage his reputation was lasting. Rachel inherited the estate and used most of the money to expand the scholarship foundation her mother loved. She also started a non-profit focused on elder abuse and family financial crimes. Louisa, the housekeeper, retired and was awarded a generous pension by Rachel. The Whitaker family never held another reunion. Greed, betrayal, and silence turned a peaceful family gathering into a crime that made headlines. But in the end, it was a dusty security camera and a woman brave enough to tell the truth that brought justice to a grieving family. Subscribe for more emotional true crime stories where justice, no matter how delayed, still finds its way